type of strings that you like, and man, they can play really, really well, which is kind of, I mean, it means that my other part of what I do, which is building, means that I have to be a little more like, well, with the manufacturers, you can have, they have their recipes. Like if you want a Gibson, you get this scale length, which is the length between the length of the string. And then Fender has a little bit different length. And then, you can get their recipe of this shape body with these type of pickups, this type of, all the different things. And each manufacturer kind of has a different recipe. So they kind of have a different sonic footprint or thumbprint. And when you go to a luthier to have someone custom make you something, you're like, well, I really like the way this one looks, but I want it to play like this one and have the sonic footprint of this one. And a luthier can go, okay, well, that means you're going to have to use these pickups, but it's going to be in this shape, but it's going to need to be this scale length, and you're going to have to use these woods, and so because that's where somebody like myself comes in, or somebody brings me something and is like, I have this interesting, like I worked on an instrument for a guy that had it was an old harmony from the 60s body, but he was like, yeah, but the neck is just this weird thing, and the way it's shaped is just kind of funky, and it's not playable by new instrument standards. And I was like, well, you could make a new neck for it and put different pickups and do all this kind of stuff. And he was like, And so then I had a pre-made neck that I'd gotten from I don't know where. And I was like, well, I have this neck, and it's the regular, like a Fender. And he's like, oh, wait, yeah, and I could do these pickups and that. And so so it was this weird cobbled together thing, but making it work and not look like you went through the the magazine and like clipped little things that said, send money. It wasn't like a bunch of just things just pasted together that looked like more of a cohesive whole. That is kind of an interesting thing. It looks like, oh wait, it's almost like as if you took that instrument from the 60s and recreated it, but with some modern accoutrement, and it's like
it's kind of like Frankensteining it,
exactly,
right?
but not like Frankenstein with like you don't want it to look like
you don't want to see the bolts.
Yeah, you don't want to see the bolts and the stitches holding my arms on. You want to be like, oh wait, where did that come from? Is that a? And they're like, well, yes, it sort of is. And so, for personally, like I like the weird stuff, the Fender offset stuff that's kind of like. And the obscure Gibsons, and like I just procured from another customer in trade for work and stuff an instrument called it's a Yamaha, and it's a Yamaha that the nickname of them, the original nickname was the Flying Samurai. So it like has this weird. It looks like. It looks like
kind of a sword body to it, or what?
Well, the headstock is like a weird katana look, which I. Theoretically, like thinking about it, I'm like, oh no, I would hate that. And then you attach it to this body that looks like this weird amoeba that's like reaching out with a weird funky arm. So it's like this crazy mismatch of all these crazy things, but then you put it together and it's like, oh, that looks like something out of a Godzilla movie. Like the band in the background playing would be like, it just, it has this, and it's very that kind of 60s kitsch. But also Japanese 60s kitsch,
Oh, that sounds fascinating, actually.
So and then the one I just procured it's the reissue that came out in the 2000s.
Okay.
That was a reissue of the 60s weird one that now is worth a decent amount of money, but I don't know, I like the weird stuff. But also sonically, I play, resonator and stuff like that too, so like just even that.
No, So that was the only question I had. The interview was over. No,
okay.
No, I want to come back to all of this, but I kind of want to find some sort of through line to how you got to do what you're doing. And I would imagine that, and this is me just projecting, so please correct me, but I would imagine that an interest and developing a passion for creating instruments would come from first playing, and then maybe having to make some modifications and things yourself. So when what was When did you sort of first pick up an instrument and learn how to play it and develop an interest in that? Have you always been interested in music from the playing aspect? Because that's a whole. A lot of people love music. A lot of people don't decide that they want to play it.
Yes. So as a little kid, my mom played folk guitar and would play some Peter, Paul, and Mary songs and stuff. And I was fascinated with the way the guitar made sound, the tones that would come out of it, and so that was an interesting thing for me. But then there was, just generally music is something that I enjoy, and then there was a couple of there's two things specifically that kind of pushed me, that I kind of was like, okay, wait, I need to do this. One was one of the bands that I used to listen to when I was a teenager, and the band is called the Toy Dolls.
Okay.
And there's the opening riff to one of their songs called "Bless You, My Son." It has this very kind of gritty. It's just like basic rock and roll guitar kind of sound, but that tonality of it was just like, oh, it just stuck in my head. It was like you taste something, ooh, I really like that, and then you never really get to taste it again, but you remember what it was like. It's like that. The tone stuck in my head. And then also around that time, there was the Ralph Macchio movie Crossroads.
Crossroads. Okay, so Robert Johnson stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so that, he played Slide, and that was stuck in my head, but I didn't really circle back around to that until probably maybe 10 years ago. So those two things. So in 1987, I begged and pleaded for my parents to get me a guitar, and they got me a nylon acoustic guitar, nylon string acoustic guitar. I still have the guitar, and it sounds pretty good for its age.
Have you done some repairs on it?
Yeah, just general, just making sure it works kind of stuff. It really isn't a very expensive guitar, and for the type of guitar that it is, it sounds okay. You put good strings on it, it sounds pretty good. But, and I played that for probably a year or two, and then started getting into electric guitar and played with some friends and did that, and then had some different electric guitar stuff just over the years for the next, till probably years and years, for the next 15, 20 years. I played guitar, but it was I played guitar on and off, mostly off.
Not gotcha. Not like
not like I didn't play out with any bands or anything like that. And then when I moved out here the first time, because I've lived in Arizona a couple times, this being the second time, the first time, the church group that we were involved with, they were like, "Oh yeah, you can play music, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." So then I started playing some music with them, kind of in their little worship group kind of thingy, and that kind of introduced me to playing live a little bit and playing more with a band.
Sure.
And then kind of just tucked that away. I still didn't play all that much. And then when I came back out to Arizona this now time that I've been here this time, and that was in 2010. So yeah, 2010, right the end of 2009, 2010, right around then. And at that point I started other people I started playing with, and I started playing right around then I got a resonator guitar, the one that I played with, the shiny guitar that if you've seen me play with the squares, I got that guitar and started really just playing music a lot.
Those things have such a sweet tone.
Yeah. It's like playing electric guitar, except for it's acoustic.
Yeah.
I mean, it has that twang that an electric guitar has.
Yeah, I've seen you play that. I've seen a lot of people play that sort of guitar, but seeing in the presence of would be you and, Scotty Spenner?
I don't.
Okay. I've seen him play one of those live too, and there's just this kind of crazy cool tone to it.
Yeah,
it's got a blues quality in it, but it sounds, because of it having a metal, bass to it. It sounds totally different.
Exactly. Yeah. So I started doing that, and at that point, I just started delving into the slide end of things, and then around 2011, 2012, right around, and then I can't remember exactly when. That's when I had been playing with another band called the Ragamuffin Stampede. We were playing.
That's a great name.
Yeah, we were playing just like punk rock covers, but in acoustic bluegrass styles, and which is, I mean, that's what the Haymarket Squares do. It's like, I mean, except for it's not really covers. It's punk grass.
Yeah.
So I started. Then I was like, Squares asked me to sit in on one time, and so I played with them once, and then I was like, and they're like, oh yeah. So then I rehearsed with them a few more times, and it was like, they're like, hey, you should be in our band. And
Become one of the marks.
Exactly. And they literally like at because we rehearse now. Most of the time we rehearse at my studio because there's space down there. But at that point, we were rehearsing at Mark Oxborough's house, and they literally because back then it was John and Mark, and they got down on all three of them got down on one knee and were like, "Will you be in our band?" And I was like, "Heck yeah!" So really cool. I do that, and then the luthiery part of it. The first time that I lived in Arizona, I've done a bunch of different jobs. Most of them are either directly I worked in the motorcycle industry for years and years. So it's a technical kind of thing. Like you have to have a mind.
If you don't mind me asking, in what aspect? Like as
I sold motorcycles. Okay. I worked in various. Well, I did pretty much everything that you would do at a motorcycle dealership, except for be an actual line mechanic. So parts counter, sales, well, and like the finance and insurance stuff, which is just the number cruncher, and upsell you to what you need is the...
the undercoating and all that.
Yeah, exactly. I never did that because I was like, I don't want to do that. Yeah. And the thing is, though, is like, because I used to ride motorcycles a lot, I was super passionate about it. When I sold motorcycles, and I was like excited and happy about it, and was like, "This is great! You should get one. It's going to be awesome." Then I was actually fairly successful when I started learning how to be better at the salesman game.
That's the worst.
I was less successful, and then I switched to doing other things. But anyway, so I've done that. I've done a lot of other things. Anyway, one of the things that I did was I drove for Dairy Maid and delivered the frozen novelty ice creams to like Circle K's, like all the the ice cream bars and whatever.
Yeah.
And their warehouse was down, way down on the other side of the river in South Phoenix. I used to drive past the Roberto Venn School of Luthiery. Guitar making school, and I always drove past and was like, oh, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, I could remember that. And this is the old campus that's over on 16th Street.
Okay.
So I always remembered that existed, and then started playing music, this second time around, and really being serious and playing with the Haymarket Squares and playing electric guitar as well, and just generally becoming a better musician. And at the same time, I'm someone who I've always just made stuff. I've worked in most of the trades, worked for general contractors and stuff.
I was going to ask about that. If you're interested in creating things and working in some sort of
definitely
maker capacity is something that's always appealed to
it's
you.
kind of always been how I am. I made model airplanes when I was a kid, and and radio control stuff and the crazy stuff like that, and was always like, ooh, what if I did this? Ooh, what if I did this? and then so the idea of guitar making was, or fixing my own instruments was not foreign to me.
Gotcha.
So I was just working on my own stuff at that point. And the internet has a lot of resources for that, but it also has a lot of people that think they know what they're doing that have no idea.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
Like, oh, you just need to glue that with some such or other glue, and you're like, oh no, that's the worst glue in the world to use for that. That's going to get everywhere. So at that point, and then in playing with the Squares, I met my now wife, and we were together for a while, and she was like, you're like a guitar nerd. You're just a nerd. And I'm like, yeah, and she's like, you need to go to the school. It's just down the street from the shop. I'm like, oh wait, no, isn't that over on? And she's like, no, it's down the street from the shop now. She's like, well, let's just go down there and do a tour, because they'll give you a tour anytime. So I go down there and get the tour, and she's like, okay, cool. And I'm like, that was great. I would love to do that. And she's like, okay, we're going to figure out how to make that happen. So between some student loans and Pell Grants and that kind of good stuff, some financial aid and whatever. And